Hi, this is Frank Schaeffer, author and commentator. And I want to pay tribute to someone who was an old enemy of mine and then became someone I admired as a friend, and that is Norman Lear. You'll hear a lot of tributes to Norman, but you won't hear one from somebody probably who he fought tooth and nail back in the late 70s and early 80s when I was my dad's nepotistic sidekick on the American religious right, making movies like How Should We Then Live and then Whatever Happened to the Human Race with Dr. C. Everett Koop, who became Surgeon General. And those series were against abortion, and they were the beginning of the evangelical pro-life juggernaut that eventually took over the Republican Party and put Trump in the White House. Norman stood up against us, and Norman would get in touch with us and call us out for our bigotry and our misogyny. And in 1981, he formed People for the American Way, and People for the American Way stood against what we were doing and tried to correct it. And we would hear from him occasionally, and we would show up named in his publications as extremists, and he would call out the misogynistic anti-abortion lies we were telling. And People for the American Way was the beginning of the pushback against the religious right. And I just have to say something about that, and that is that Norman was correct. Not only were we wrong, but his fellow liberals, people on the Democratic side of things, did not understand what we were doing. He did. Years later, after I wrote my memoir, Crazy for God, and Norman read it, and we talked on the phone a couple of times, he was so pleased that I had sort of come to not just his side of the political equation, but that I had had the temerity to change my mind. And he commented to me once that I was one of the only people he knew from that evangelical religious background that not only changed their mind, but had written a book, as well as a couple novels like Portofino and others to talk about that journey and my coming out. So I want to salute Norman Lear for someone who was right when I was wrong, for a courageous man who stood up against what has become the white Christian nationalist movement in this country. Saw it long before other people did. When no one else was paying attention, he formed People for the American Way. He saw what was coming. He was prophetic, not only a great TV producer, but a prophetic man, and a courageous man, and a kind man who reached out to an old enemy, that was me, and thanked me for changing my mind. I want to salute Norman. I want to give the best to Lynn, his wife who survives him, thank them both for their work. And Norman, forgive me, because I'm not sure what you wound up believing or not believing, and I certainly call myself an atheist who believes in God, so I'm confused. But Norman, God bless you, and thank you. My name is Frank Schaeffer.